Houston's a mecca for the occult, really. And, but it's crazy because they're the only lodge in Houston that will do the full initiation. Well, actually, they're the only lodge in Texas that does the full initiation. And I was like, why? And they were like, man, because Masonry is like real Christian. So a lot of the guys think that it's satanic.
Mm.
And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, but it's not. You know what I mean? It's like, it's showing you like devils and hell and shit. But the point is like to resist temptation. It's like Dante's Inferno. You know what I mean? It's like you get taken around and they're like, here's a temptation. Would you like this? And it's like, no. You know what I mean?
Well, this is kind of perfect because we could just roll. We're rolling right now.
And one thing for you, Ryan, is just get comfortable with that, but perfectly pointed at you.
We're rolling.
Should I have it more down like this?
It wherever you feel comfortable.
Right on.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Hey, look, guys, we got Ryan Scroggins back for episode 2, and let me tell you guys something. The universe does weird things. You could say it's just your mind on a schedule. You could say this and that, but I'll let you decide. Today, last year, exactly 1 year ago, we had our first episode with Ryan. And I promise you on my grave, I didn't realize that. I had no idea. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe it's because it was summer again. And that heat came up again. And it's just the same movement of life again. That's also possible, I'm not saying like there's some God entity with like a code book that's making this happen, but here we are again.
And when I woke up this morning and realized that we had this date thing, I looked at my shirt in the picture and it's this shirt as well. So I was like, I have to keep it on. Just for record keeping.
That made it a little better for sure.
But I was like, wow. So Ryan, thanks so much for coming.
Hey, thanks for having me again, guys.
Also, feel free to do that real quick. I don't want to interrupt you. Maybe we'll give a quick background. If you're new to this, if you're new to our guest Ryan.
I think there's a little leak in this thing.
Oh.
It might also be wet. From it just being wet when I washed it.
Okay.
Just FYI, but no worries. I met, quick background, met Ryan through our mutual doctor, and the rest is history. And, it's cool that we can have you here, especially to talk about the Freemasonry, the times, the zeitgeist. That's almost, that's as important. And we had a good conversation about that last time. And I'm sure that you have some thoughts on where we're going right now. So thanks for coming, man.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So what's on your mind?
Whatever you guys want to talk about. Last time we kind of went all over the board, so this time I prefer to talk about more of the Western Mystery School stuff, Masonry, Golden Dawn, Kemetic Orthodoxy, BOTA, all the different groups that I'm a part of, and I just like answering your questions and educating people.
Sweet.
Let's start with the BOTA.
Okay. So BOTA is a Western Mystery School based in Kabbalah, Rosicrucianism. The full name is the Builders of the Adytum. It was a group started by a guy named Paul Foster Case, who was an adept of the original Golden Dawn, but he was an American. You guys will find this interesting. So he was a jazz trumpet player.
Oh, wow.
And the story or the myth, whatever you want to call it, is that after he had gone through the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Alpha et Omega, he was approached by secret chiefs, and they told him, we're going to give you teachings to start your own school, but you have to stop playing music.
It is widely known that the tobacco and diet industries lobby governments with scientific propaganda for years until proven guilty in court. The artificial treatment of our water is the next corporate deception.
For example, virtually every nation in Europe has rejected the use of artificial fluoride. International studies since the 40s have repeatedly shown that endocrine and neurological effects increase after repeated consumption, even at the levels accepted by U.S. government.
Epic Water Filters is the most thorough industry-grade filtration system that Houston Ensemble has ever used. They reduce heavy metals upwards keywords of 99.5%, such as lead and mercury, bacteria like E. coli, and poisons like chromium, nitrate, and fluoride.
Join us in our journey to living a toxin-free life and get your epic water filter using discount code Houston Ensemble lowercase one word. That's Houston Ensemble lowercase one word for 20% off your epic water filter.
Oh,
You have to dedicate your life to this instead of music. And he did. And it still continues to this day. They're based, the mother temple is in LA on Figueroa.
Figueroa.
And it's pretty cool. It's a lot of people call it Golden Dawn Light because he took a lot of things out of it. He took the Enochian out of it. He was a little afraid of Enochian magic. And he kind of integrated more music into it, which I really like a lot. He's really, he does a lot of sound and color stuff, which we can get into later, where certain notes correspond to certain colors and certain occult correspondences correspond to those things as well. So it's pretty neat.
And there's a headquarters in Houston.
There's a temple here in Houston. I technically am a member, but I'm not very active with them. I still get the, I don't know what you call it, the correspondence teachings in the mail. And I read them, but I'm not active with the local temple. It's a good local temple. It's run by a bunch of older ladies. It's very heavy into tarot.
oh,
When you show up to groups there, they meet once a month. And when you show up to groups, you can go to a group meeting even if you're not a member, which is pretty cool. You can go sit in and check it out. And most of the time at their group meetings, they'll give you a uncolored tarot card, usually, and it's kind of big. And they'll pass out map colors and crayons and stuff like that, and they'll show you like, well, this guy's robes are this color, and his hat is this color, and the mountains in the background are this color, and they show you like every single thing for the color has a meaning. And then they'll do like a lecture on the tarot. They do this really cool thing called vibratory attunement, which is really interesting. It's funny. So one day I was hanging out with the guy who runs our particular branch of the Golden Dawn out in Vegas. And he was like, "You're in the BOTA too?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, what do they do?" And I started telling him about vibratory attunement. And he was like, "Well, what's that?" And it was pretty funny, his response. But basically what it is they have a board, maybe about as long as this little love seat that I'm sitting on. And it's, maybe this tall. It has 3 squares on it. It's black on the background. And they'll start off with like red, yellow, green, right? And they'll say, okay, pick a square. And if your square is red, there's a little lady on the side playing a little organ. And they'll say, if your square is red, this is your note. And they'll play a note. And they'll say, if your square is yellow, this is your note. They'll play another note. If your square is green, this is your note. They'll play another note. And it forms a chord. The 3 notes form a chord. And they'll say, okay, when we start, we want you to vibrate or sing the divine name, E-I-O, right? And so what's cool is when everybody starts doing this together in the room, it forms a chord. And I think they do it, it's been a while since I've done it. I think it's 7 times per note and color. And then they'll flip the board and then each color goes up. So like red becomes red-orange. Yellow becomes yellow-green. Green becomes blue-green. And then the notes go up either a whole step or half step, depending on what the note is. And then they flip it again and again and again until they go through the whole color scale and all the notes.
wow.
And they use it as a healing ritual. So before they do it, they'll pass little Post-it notes around, and you write, what you want, whether it's self-healing or healing for someone that you know. You put it in a basket, and they put it up on the altar while they do the vibratory attunement. But it's a powerful little ritual. And it was funny. I told the guy that runs our Golden Dawn about it, and he was like, "Really? That's what that is?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Man, see, that's why I don't like Paul Foster Case." And I
Mm.
was like, "Why?" And he was like, "Well, in reality, that's a pretty secretive second order teaching.
Oh wow.
Like they're doing it a different way, but I guess it originally comes from a second order teaching from the original Golden Dawn, which was interesting to hear him say that."
Wow.
Tell us about this original Golden Dawn second order.
Well, it's kind of controversial. So the Golden Dawn started in 1888 in England. And as you guys know, there was lots of famous people in it. Crowley, W.B. Yeats, the famous Irish poet, to name a few. And the original order, Crowley caused a lot of problems. Our order is definitely no fan of Crowley. And ultimately, the order, well, a lot of people say that it disbanded. One of the guys who was one of the founders, McGregor Mathers, he moved from England to France, started the second order, the Alpha et Omega there in France. He ended up passing away. Then a few years later, his wife passed away. And a lot of people say that at that point it disbanded. So years pass. I want to say around the 70s in the U.S., Golden Dawn groups started popping up here and there. In the 70s, it was one of the big occult revivals. And so these quote unquote clandestine Golden Dawn groups started forming. Then some time passed, and it's kind of a complicated story, and it's controversial. A lot of people deny that this happened, but essentially what happened was there was a group of adepts in Europe in the 90s, mid to late 90s. Some of them were forming Golden Dawn groups and searching out the original Golden Dawn, because really it never disbanded. It just went completely underground and kind of into the shadows, if you will. You know what I mean? So these adepts that were kind of trying to form a revival in Europe were approached by an adept who, in Europe, he kept pretty private, but he was very well achieved in his professional field and in the occult. He was a doctor. I believe at this point he retired. His name was Nicholas Terashenko. He was also, I don't know if you guys have heard of Gurdjieff. He was Gurdjieff's apprentice. He was Gurdjieff's apprentice. And he was helping run the Gurdjieff Society in Paris. Anyway, he approached one of these adepts named Jean-Pascal Rougiou and kind of told him, like, "Hey, I know that you guys are trying to do this. I actually have lineage directly to the original order. And one of the rules of Rosicrucianism is that every 100 years, there should be a reformation of the order." So they reformed the order, essentially. And what they did is they took the Golden Dawn is I guess you could say, a 3-tier kind of thing. There's the outer order, the inner order, well, the first, second, and third orders. So what they did is they took the teachings of the third order, reformed them, and then bumped the old teachings of the third order down to the second order, and then bumped the teachings of the second order down to the first order. This caused all kinds of drama because a lot of these quote unquote clandestine Golden Dawn groups were like, "We don't believe you. You're lying. You're just trying to take over what we've been doing for years," which wasn't the case. As far as I know, I wasn't there when this happened. But as far as I know, a lot of these groups were actually invited to be part of the Reformation. and they declined because they didn't believe that it was happening. They didn't believe these people had the authority or the lineage to do this. I think a lot of them were paranoid because they had been publishing books and selling ritual magic tools, and I think that they were kind of like, well, they're just trying to get in on our business, and it's like, no, that's not what was really happening. So a lot of these groups still argue a lot about it and deny that it happened. Um, but I can say for a fact that our second order teachings are not to be found anywhere that I've searched.
Hmm.
And I have no idea what's beyond the grade that I'm in, which is just the first grade of the second order.
Wow.
So it's interesting to study the history. I've been in this one particular school for 12, 13 years now. And it took me probably a decade just to understand what really happened with the Reformation. And like I say, a lot of these other groups, deny that it happened. But personally, I think it's kind of ridiculous because personally, I never try to say anything against other groups, especially if I'm not in them, because in my view, I'm like, well, if you're not in the group, how do you know what they're doing?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like a lot of these people, I don't want to say are conspiracy theorists about it, but they'll say, like, oh, you guys don't have these teachings, or you don't do this, or you do this. And it's like, well, how do you know? Unless you're in the group,
Yeah.
And I've always told people, like, well, if you want to find out what someone's doing, join it.
Yeah.
Figure it out for yourself, But personally, I don't say anything negative about other groups that I'm not a part of because I'm literally ignorant of what they're doing, So I can't judge them really.
Is a lot of the history that you learned / are presented received through the groups as well as outside? Like your
It's
own
both.
personal.
Yeah, I mean, it's both.
Are there would you say that there are, for lack of a better term, just classes or lectures? Obviously, they're probably not like a class, but
Yeah. So
a meeting.
the particular Golden Dawn that I'm in, which is the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the Rosicrucian Order of Alpha et Omega, we have. So if you join the particular order that I'm talking about, right off the bat, you're assigned a tutor. So you have a personal tutor.
Mm.
You have a journal that you keep for daily practice, weekly practice, whatever you're assigned to do. You have to send a report to your tutor monthly. So you do have a mentor that will guide you along the path. And then we also offer twice a month webinars. And the webinars are taught by the adepts of the order, and they're global. So it's like you'll get an email and you can watch these webinars. And the webinars are pretty awesome because once a month, it's a class on a certain topic. And then the other class for that month is strictly Q&A. So it's pretty awesome to be able to have someone that you can just pick their brain, especially if you're new at it,
Were all the classes just Jordan Maxwell videos that they forwarded to you guys? I'm joking. They're like, he knows more than all of us. No, I'm totally joking. But I've been watching a lot of Jordan Maxwell.
I'm not familiar with him.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. That's good. And obviously my reference doesn't catch, but he's just, I don't know. What did you say? Very well known I'd actually be curious to know what you think because he talks a lot about ancient history, Freemasonry, ancient occult societies. One thing that I thought actually was really interesting was when there was kind of sort of an inquisition in Europe or maybe in England. Correct me if I'm wrong anywhere, about secret societies. And this was in the 1700s, early 1700s. Don't quote me on any of this, but they said, we're outlawing all secret societies except if you publish the registry of who's in them. And so that's what allowed, according to this, that was partially a reason that the Freemasons were able to stay contrary to other ones. I don't know, but he talks a lot about it, and
It's-
also
yeah, it's
Egyptian.
that's pretty wild. That reminds me of, so I can't remember the exact tax form, but I know that if you start a church, there's 2 tax forms, and I can't remember what they're called, but one of them requires that you publicly
Mm,
name your members, and I think that that's very much an invasion of privacy.
that makes sense. And this might be a little bit of an aside, but I just want to say this before we potentially forget about it. Since you brought up the Rosicrucian order, you have to have some thoughts on the Georgia Guidestones.
Yeah.
Can you enlighten us about what you're thinking?
Well,
And maybe fill in anybody who might have no idea.
well, so the weird thing is it's like, obviously we don't know who really paid for them to be built. The name that the guy used is like, what was it? It's not Christian Rosenkreutz, but it's
RC
Christian.
Christian.
yeah. So same thing. And that comes from the Fama Fraternitatis, and that's like the book for that's essentially the first official Rosicrucian writing. That's where the whole thing about every 100 years the order should be reformed. So I don't know. I mean, in my opinion, it's not very Rosicrucian.
Mm.
Rosicrucians, I don't think, would try to call the society. You know what I mean? I mean, that's pretty radical in my opinion. A lot of the other things that it says on there, it's like, yeah, I agree with a lot of it. But the whole, like, what is it, 50?
500 million?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
that's
keep the global population under 500 million.
yeah, it's like that's
take care of, like,
in my opinion,
reproduction.
that's not.
Can we pull up the commandments?
Yeah.
I read the commandments and I feel like you. I'm like, when you first read them, except for the first one, which is the glaring one, you're like, what? The others are like,
Well, and it's
okay.
like, you guys know, we talked about this last year. It's like a lot of these groups, the Masons, the Golden Dawn, all Western mystery schools have been infiltrated here and there by people whose intentions are not pure. So it's like maybe
we're going to ask you a lot about that.
yeah,
too.
it's like maybe the person that built these went off to a darker path. It's
Right.
like, but that's the thing. It's like we don't know who built it. I did hear a rumor, and I think that this is probably strictly a rumor. That I don't know if you guys heard this yet. I've only seen it one place, and I can't remember where I saw it. And at this point, I do think that it's kind of probably not true, but it was definitely an interesting rumor.
Mhm.
Is that the president of Pfizer came out and said that he wants to rebuild them, but he only wants to rebuild them 666 days after they were destroyed.
That's a lot. I thought you were going to say the
Really?
Ted Turner.
No,
thing.
I mean, like I say, I think that that's probably
So some people
not
say
even
that
true, but when
it may be paid for by Ted Turner because it's in the middle of nowhere in Georgia where he's from. But, we need to prove that too. And that's crazy about the Pfizer president thing. Maybe we can look that up as well. see if
yeah,
we
and
can-
it's like, I don't know if that's true, but
The speculative aspect of the Ted Turner theory is, yeah, he's from that in the middle of nowhere spot. And also, he's on record, like on 60 Minutes with Charlie Rose, talking about the global population is the most important thing. That's gonna kill us all. We need to stop it.
yeah.
And what because he has that gap too, so he just looks like real weird talking about it like that.
I mean, that's what's interesting. It's like if you read the Fama Fraternitatis, it has a list of the quote unquote rules of Rosicrucianism in there, and one of the main things is it's like you. So one of the things it talks about, it's like you don't use your talents, if you will, for anything other than to heal people, and even then, it's gratis, free. So that whole like let's keep the population down, to me is like, that's just antithetical to the.
Let's go to the.
And just a quick thing, I just looked up the Pfizer CEO
Yeah.
thing. Now, this is just according to the Reuters article. They said that the main tweet that went viral, the main New York Times, it was basically a New York Times headline that says Pfizer CEO vows to rebuild the iconic Georgia Guidestones. They said it was actually digitally altered and that headline doesn't exist.
Really?
And if I am looking at the picture, we have like there's like a glow, kind of like weird glow around it. And they also brought up that the font, which we talked about the other day, differs like technically. So, maybe somebody just made that up, which.
Can we look up the headline?
Yeah.
Yeah, regardless, it's fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a made up story.
Yeah. As soon as I heard it, I was like, this is probably fake, but it's
a little bit too good.
It's fun to talk about.
Yeah. Now that isn't to say that Pfizer is not into any other chicanery.
Yeah. Well, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on with Bill Gates buying up all the farmland and,
Seriously, even more just the other
He
week.
bought some more, but check this out. And I mean, here's the deal with all of these. They sound good, but the question is always who, how, and why. So, number 2, guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Guide reproduction. Who is guiding reproduction? In Aldous
that's a little
Huxley's
weird too.
Brave New World,
Yeah.
the government guided reproduction.
Yeah. That's a little weird.
Okay, let me keep going here. Unite humanity with a living new language. That's interesting because in the Bible, God thwarted the plans of the devil by creating linguistic diversity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little weird. It's like a little on the nose. It's almost like we're going to flip that concept. Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Again,
That's good.
I mean that's good. But are we talking about equilibrium where everyone takes a pill so they're not too emotional? Or what are we talking about? We're talking about censoring certain art because it might be triggering. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, that's up for interpretation. I usually prefer to see things in a positive light, and I would think that that's, one thing. So when I watched y'all's podcast, the last episode, a lot of religion got brought up. And we see a lot of people these days that have been hurt in their younger years by various types of religions, especially here in the West. A lot of people have been jaded by Christianity, but it to me, it's something that the population has got to work through and understand that it's like, it's like this whole, this can be correlated to all kinds of things that are going on right now, like the whole anti-police movement. It's like, okay, you're going to say ACAB? Like, that's ridiculous, man. That's like saying whole races of people are horrible. It's like there's bad eggs and everything. And that goes for religion. It's like you're gonna have good people, you're gonna have bad people. But when you look at the whole picture, no religion was created to be evil. No mainstream Western religion was created to be evil. Religions originally were created to guide and regulate humanity. Some people need it. And if they need it and they're a good person, more power to them. Like we were talking before we started rolling, everyone's on their own path. And that's completely fine. If everyone was the exact same as far as spiritual attainment goes, there would be no point in incarnating on this earth. You know what I mean? Everyone has their own tests and trials that they have to go through.
Yeah.
And this is a realization that a lot of people will come to after they've gone through spiritual self-work.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings a sense of calmness because you realize, like, well, I can't judge this person because they're exactly where they need to be to learn the lessons that they need to learn.
Which kind of that's a great way of what I said in the last podcast, where it's like, do you love all people? And her response is no. My response is yes, because I think honestly we have to, because of what you just said. Everybody, firstly, not everybody can really pick. There's kind of a destiny fate thing, and I brought it up in the podcast. Even something as materialistic as you have a brain tumor that messed up your chemistry, hormones, all this stuff, which then had you kill somebody, because you were so messed up and you couldn't choose that. There was no way out of that.
Yeah, well, and it's hard to understand that we live in a world of duality. Evil is going to exist. Good is going to exist. It's just the nature of this physical reality that we live in. And it is hard to understand these things. But, the more you study, the more you realize things, the more this will start to make sense, and the more it actually takes a weight off of you, because you realize, like I said, certain people are alive going through certain things exactly for a reason. Me and one of my good friends like to say all the time, there's nothing wrong with the playground equipment. You know what I mean? Everything is exactly as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how we react to these situations is the key to it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
My old tutor told me a great piece of advice that I still talk to people about and I still try to use on a daily basis. He said, look, next time you're in a situation that you perceive to be negative, whether it's you dropped your phone and you broke it, or someone cut you off on the freeway, or whatever it may be, don't immediately react to it.
Mm.
Pause for a moment. Try to take a step back and analyze the situation. And he was like, look, even if you're talking to somebody and you have to pause for a moment, your brain works so fast, they're not going to think twice that you're taking a moment. And what you can do is you can analyze the situation from several angles. You can try to put yourself in that person's shoes. You can do all kinds of things. And then once you've analyzed the situation, then you decide, should I react? If I do react, how am I going to react? And you start to realize, and this is something that I try to tell people that are trying to grow spiritually. It's like you should do this every waking moment of every day. Because if you do this, you get better and better at it. And as the years go by, you'll have things that would trigger you in the past not even phase you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And these reactions, especially these like instant emotional reactions, mold your reality.
Mm-hmm.
If you're spitting out negativity constantly by things that are happening to you, you're going to mold your world into a kind of a negative place. You're allowing that energy to flow all around you. So the more that you can keep it at bay, the easier life becomes. And I think that that's a great lesson for everyone to try to use.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, as much as you want to talk about the Golden Dawn, you talk about the Rosicrucian Order of Alpha and Omega, because we actually want to know a little bit more about the legacy of this stuff in Houston, because I think Houston's
a Mecca for the occult, really.
Yeah, probably one of the.
It's pretty
Meccas in
interesting.
Houston,
Like when you start to search things out here, it's like we have basically every Western mystery school that exists in this city with active groups, which is kind of awesome. So it's like, anybody that's spiritually searching for something can find it here, which I think is a great thing. And you would never, Houston's a big city, but when you think about it, I would have never thought that was the case.
Mm-hmm.
LA, New York, maybe, but it's like, I think that we have a bigger occult scene here than New York City.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I've heard different theories, and I don't know if they're true or not. I've never really taken the time to verify it, but I've heard one theory that we're on a ley line similar to the Great Pyramids and things like that, like energy centers on the earth, Um, but like I say, I've never taken the time to verify any of that. I think really, in reality, it's just because it's a big city and very spread out. And there's lots of things going on here. Houston is just such a big city with no public transportation that it takes a while to figure out. Like, I mean, you guys know how it is. It's like you can live here, you can move here and live here for 5 years and not even know how to get around still.
Mhm.
Not even know like you guys are jazz musicians, and it's like you could be a jazz fan and come move here, and you wouldn't figure out like what bars to go see good jazz music at for a handful of years.
Seriously.
So I think it's just the fact that it's a big city. I think really.
And the past week, I was going downtown, like downtown Houston, kind of taking some pictures, looking around, actually taking a second to stop and look at the architecture, the buildings, what buildings are where, because we have some insane buildings
Mhm.
here that there's a lot of symbolism in the buildings too.
There's a lot of really cool churches downtown that I want to go visit that I've never.
I also went to
gone
some
to
of the
see,
churches. I know I went to the Christ Anointed Church right by the baseball stadium. It's right around there.
Okay.
Right by Stadium. That was amazing. So much imagery in
Mhm.
there.
I know we have some really cool like Eastern Orthodox churches that I'd like to go visit.
I'm sure we do. Even this is not downtown, but there's that crazy like Hindu temple. It's all white marble and it's kind of out in that area.
It's over by my house. Yeah, the
The
Hare
huge-
Krishna temple. Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah. I
even-
live
even that.
maybe 6 blocks from there.
But I went even into the underground mall part downtown. Are you familiar with that?
I haven't been there yet, but yeah, that's
Well-
what I mean. It's like that's just one of many places that.
Right. I only learned about this year that was even a thing. And I went down there and it's very kind of dystopian. There's a word for these things that I only recently learned called a liminal space. And so there are memes that are like liminal spaces and it's basically an image. Take like a kind of rundown place where like kids or like families, because I used to do this back in the day, would go and there'd be like, ball pits and arcade games and rock climbing and ice skating and skate rinks all in like one facility, like a party facility with like crazy weird carpet and like pizza and all this stuff. But it's empty and it's like run down. And this is sort of touching at a liminal space. And downtown underground reminded me of that a lot. But I went and was just looking around and there was a picture of 3 men in really nice clothing. It was like 1890 something. And then I read the letter and it said, I could pull it up on my phone, but I don't take the time to do that. But it said something about your father looked 21. I could definitely tell he was getting this Masonic charm, something. And I was like, and this was the president of the Houston Chronicle in 18 something writing this letter next to this picture. And I was like, wow, I have no idea what this letter is about. And it's not accompanied by anything else here. It's just on the wall next to this picture. No other historical landmark of anything, just randomly here. And also no point to the letter. I'm like, what is all this about? And so it's just kind of like, if you actually take a second to stop, so, anywhere here in Houston but downtown especially, you'll just start to see these things if you're thinking about them more.
Well,
It's
and
crazy.
this is something that we were talking about recently at a Masonic Lodge meeting. Was that 100 years ago? I mean, not even 100 years ago, but it was a way bigger deal than it is now. Like, membership dropped drastically in like the late 70s and has been low since. And I don't know why. Like, we were trying to like figure out reasons that this could be. I think it's just, technology, the world's changed. Things are different. People don't do a lot of things like they used to do. We were talking about how like, back in the day, families and coworkers would go like have a weekly bridge card game at someone's house, and it was like that was a thing, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it's like now people don't do anything like that. But Masonry was a huge thing back in the day. Um, there's a lodge in the Heights, Reagan Lodge, and we were talking about how membership was so strong in like I think we were talking about maybe the 50s or 60s, that if anyone in the lodge died, there was a cemetery close to that lodge. The guys would show up. I mean, the lodge was full, like totally full. And the guys would show up, put their aprons on, open the lodge, walk down to the cemetery, like a parade almost, and then hold a Masonic funeral for the brother that passed away. And nowadays, it's not like that at all. I mean, you know, there's still Masonic funerals and everything like that, but it's not like you got 50 guys walking through the Heights neighborhood to hold a funeral for one of their brothers that passed away. You know, now it's just different. You know, the membership is lower, and I don't know why. I mean, I attribute it really to technology and, you know, television, the internet. It's changed the dynamic.
It also kind of seems like people don't seek that knowledge or deep spiritual knowledge as intensely as they may have used to.
Yeah, they take it for granted.
Well, post-industrialization, there's so much more advertising, more stuff.
Well, and it's become more self-involved.
Self-involved.
You know, it's like
hyper.
everything is
industrial.
about me.
Yes.
I want to be this big thing, you know, and it's
Yes.
like in these old Western mystery schools, especially Masonry, it's like that's not, you're taught to become a better man and a better human being, but you're taught to do these things through charity and helping out your fellow man.
And
You know?
community.
Yeah, in your community, it's a big deal.
The communal aspect of living has been totally shifted to the insular, like you said, and even so
Mhm.
far as now, like we have people that are in the metaverse practically as their
Yeah.
job.
I mean, you go
literally.
to a coffee shop and
Yeah.
people are just glued to their phones. They're not talking to each other.
And this might be because we're in a awkward phase gadget wise, but then I think about, well, okay, if the issue is bandwidth, and you know, it's not the phone that's the problem, it's that you're glued to it with your face. So let's just put it in your brain. I mean, you know, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know how I feel. Like, could be great. I wanted to say though, before I forget this, and this is just a little theory of mine, but I believe that, and maybe this makes me a bit of a psycho that I think like this, but there's a lot of linguistic tricks in things that are advertised. You know that movie They Live, John
Yep.
Carpenter. So if we can really quick go back to the Guidestone commandments,
Mhm.
please. This is why I think these commandments, or whatever they want to call them, are a linguistic trick. Because, and I'll give you an analogy, maybe hopefully it'll make sense. The first one is keep the population to 500 million, right? The obvious question is how? Who's going to do that?
And they were written in 1986.
Yeah, when the population was pretty large.
population was over 4 billion
Yeah.
already.
So off the bat, you're like, what are we gonna like?
Well, I mean, we could
What?
talk about this all day long. I mean, you guys know that the food is poison, the water is poison.
Right.
You
So
know?
that's what I kind of was alluding to. But see how all the other ones afterwards seem like they seem good. Like,
Well, I think the
let's do
second
it.
one is crazy too, right? What is it?
Guide reproduction.
Yeah.
Wisely.
And also, there's this number 6. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. NWO vibe a little bit here. But
See, that could be interpreted a couple different ways too, because they're kind of saying like, let the nations, the countries be independent and rule themselves. But then they also kind of throw in the thing at the end, which I mean could
which
be
you
good
do
if it's
there's a
done.
world.
And you do need that.
Yeah, it could
You
be good
need
if it's
like
done the
a-
right way.
I get it. Hey, I get it.
a place for everybody to come to should there be some sort of thing, which we have now. But at the same time, you can't let that power get out of hand
Mm-hmm.
in a sort of way like it has gotten to an extent
This
where
is why
it's
I'm
like,
saying it's a linguistic trick.
right.
Like, look, I know, like I keep saying every single time, I see the bright side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's like federal and state.
Yes.
You know, like federal definitely overreaches sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, I mean, it's the same thing, you know?
Now, hold on.
No,
hold
I'm
on.
good,
We're
yeah.
so excited to talk, but I just I know I'll forget this if I don't mention it.
Mhm.
This is how I think it's a linguistic trick. It'll be like me saying this. Okay. Klaus Schwab sucks. That's the first commandment.
And
Then-
no,
then-
and no,
then-
he doesn't mean that.
Right.
For the record.
I don't mean that. Yeah, we got to bleep that out. Yeah,
Probably
we
so,
should
honestly.
bleep that out. What you look at the where it was in the timeline, but and then the 9 other commandments following that are like extremely logical, peaceful things. Like if we are able to resolve this, the world can have more farmland for cropping. That's the second one, and the third one is, and then people will have more civil rights and be more at peace. And then 3, there won't be war, right? But the first one is we got to murder somebody. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's the linguistic trick to me.
It is pretty, I mean, yeah.
Because you'll go back to one and be like, oh, but that one was weird, but the other 9 are good, though. To me, it's a trick.
And as I just said, especially weird with our population already being in the billions.
Well, and yeah, I mean, I definitely think you're right. I definitely think that the masses are easy to manipulate. So you could be like, well, look how good all of these are. You should just agree with the other one. And there are a lot of people that are like, you know what, maybe you're right, you know, and it's like, you know, I mean, that's definitely true. And
I'm glad y'all think it makes sense.
well, and you guys know, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
the masses are definitely manipulated on a daily basis,
Mhm.
you know.
And along with the context of one, there being the time capsule that had no date of it being opened. On there, it said there's a time capsule buried 6 feet below to be opened on, and then no carving in there. So then I'm thinking,
For the Georgia Guidestones?
Mhm.
I didn't know about that.
that's on one of the stones. And so I'm thinking, okay, who's opening the time capsule? Which then means whose land is it on? So we really need to know both those things. Like who owns the land that it's on, which I haven't heard yet. And then
It's private property, right?
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I was gonna say
It's
if
not like government property, right?
No. And it costs about $1 million to build that thing.
And then also, well, one, we want to know what's in the time capsule, but then 2, the way that they went about it right after it was blown up was kind of just odd, where there was really no investigation. It seemed it was blown up.
desecrated
Well,
And
the thing that I think is really weird about it too is that they have video of the explosion,
right.
but they don't have video of who planted the explosion
Mm-hmm.
because supposedly it's on like a 24-hour recording.
That's
Mhm.
a great point
Yeah.
too.
So it's
Yeah.
like, well, if you have video of the explosion, like,
What about previously?
yeah.
Well, I mean,
I mean, the whole thing is fishy.
You don't bulldoze a crime scene.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
even
the
that.
excuse for that was that it was not structurally sound, so they were afraid someone was going to go over there and it would collapse, and you
Tape
know,
it off.
yeah,
Tape it off, but also how
I
about
agree. I mean, the whole thing's fishy.
How
The
about, like-
creation of it, who owns the property,
You know.
the destruction of it, the whole thing is
and
just
let's
like,
put it on a truck. Let's get some cranes, put it on a truck, and put it in, somewhere safe.
They just
to keep-
knocked
and they
it.
just destroyed it.
yeah,
Kind of. I mean, like we even have at Rice University, we have a full size piece of the Berlin Wall. It's
Mm.
like that was carted away by somebody.
well, trust me, I'm sure that went somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
Somebody's got some souvenirs.
And it was crazy when I was at Rice. Some people actually went up to that piece of the Berlin Wall. I think I heard that there were some football players, and they were like, they just spray painted on it Trump 2020. I was like, damn, don't do that. Like, dude, I don't even care what your thoughts are on the Berlin Wall, or like anything. And I'm sure that there were none, by the way. I'm sure that there were it didn't have anything to do with that. I'm sure they just wanted to
Make a statement.
make a statement defaming something, and they're like Trump 20, and they were able to erase it and whatever. But that's another reason that I'm not into destroying monuments, kind of regardless of it.
I'm against it. I mean,
Or,
it's
like, spray
it's
paint.
history, you know?
And if it's
And if these
really
historic monuments are destroyed, history is going to repeat itself.
seriously,
I
and
mean, and I think anyone that doesn't understand that is just, like I say, I try not to judge people, but it's like, that's just ignorant, you know?
here's one that I saw the other day that had me thinking a little bit. This guy who I follow, who's it's like a special forces guy. His name is Tim Kennedy. And he was in Russia, and there was like they were at some place, and it was a giant piece of Lenin's arm
From the statue.
from the statue that was taken down, turned into a toilet, and he's like peeing into his hand. And he was all about it. And I get that. I get that sentiment, but at the same time,
You did it for your ego, and that's not a good enough reason.
Yeah.
and they're like making it into a toilet to be like, this guy's, a crapshoot,
Mm-hmm.
which, yeah, maybe he is. Maybe he is.
Hmm.
But at the same time,
He was
somebody,
also a
I always think,
Jesuit agent. No,
Yeah.
let's get it.
I always think about the people who made the thing, the actual artists themselves. Like a better example of this, a little more nuanced example, is the William Marsh Rice statue at Rice, which is in the main courtyard. It's this giant statue of him. And there, of course, last year, I think it happened after our podcast. They were saying, we got to take it down. The kids were saying, we got to take it down because he owned 18 slaves.
Hmm.
And by the way, barely. He wasn't even with them. He just had them to his estate. And they're like, we need to take the statue down. The kids are protesting every day. And I'm like, okay, look, I get that. That's not even the question, whether or not slavery was bad or good. That's so far gone. We get that. But like destroying this, I'm thinking as an artist, and I think we could all understand this too, whether a visual artist or a musical artist or something like that, you were maybe commissioned to do a work, and then later on they're like, we want to destroy your work because we don't like the idea of it. And you'd be like, damn, I spent a year working on this. Why do we still play Wagner? Why do we still play all these classical musicians?
So I'll tell you something. I got to spend a couple of weeks in Cambodia about 8 years ago. And I went out there because some friends of mine were getting married. And I'll tell you what, it was probably the greatest trip of my life. They got married by monks in the Angkor Wat complex. It was insane. But I'm bringing this up because we were walking through one of the city streets. And our friend that was getting married, she was like, go look at that essentially pillar over there. It's kind of in the middle of this street, right? And I go over there and I realize when I get close to it that it's like full of something, and it's skeletons
Oh, wow.
from the Khmer Rouge, the communist
Mhm.
tragedy that happened over there. And it was placed there as a reminder so that nothing like that would happen again.
Mm.
And that's what I mean. These statues of people who were slave owners, it's like, look, man, obviously everyone agrees that slavery is horrible, but these things are there as reminders, and it's like, what if we tear them all down? If we erase the fact that slavery ever happened in 100 years, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
If there's no knowledge of it, you know what I
Seems
mean?
like-
I mean, I think it would take more than 100 years, but you get the idea of what I'm saying. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, horrible things have happened in the past. We need to recognize that.
And I think that they need a reminder that's more important today, that there is actually more slavery today than there was back then. It's just
People don't want to.
And that's why I'm always like, how about you go throw away your iPhone if you're so mad?
Yeah, well, people don't want to. They don't want to accept what's happening
Mm-hmm.
in front of them. It's weird. I mean, we live in weird times.
Hey, but you know what though? I don't think it's that weird. I think that there's many things that are placed in the culture that are perfect trauma triggers.
Yeah. I think we're living in an exciting time.
Oh,
It is exciting.
are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Not boring.
I want to say this. I say trauma triggers. I want to elaborate on that because I don't want to sound like I'm crazy right here, but I mean very specific subliminal trauma triggers or memory triggers or behavioral triggers. For example, just very basic ones: the use of sex imagery in everything. And we know about that. That's like a common one. We're like, yeah, it's sex. We get it. But there's also repeating things until they appear true.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very easy one to do. Psychological trick.
Oh, that happens all over the news.
All over, exactly. Here's another psychological trip. The boiling frog concept or the tiptoe. You don't take away the rights immediately. You do it in 100 years. And then by that time, the generations are used to it. They think it's the way of life.
Yeah, chip away at it.
Yeah. So there's all these things of that nature that individuals, and I don't want to call them dumb or whatever, sheep or whatever, but hey, not everyone has the same computational capacity up here. I think. Okay. Unfortunately.
Well, and a lot of people, for them to have not even spiritual revolution, but just a mental revolution happen, they have to have something pretty traumatic happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
And in the United States, we're kind of spoiled rotten. You know what I mean? Like a lot of these younger kids. I mean, I think the only reason that I have the views that I have on a lot of things is because I'm well traveled. I've traveled a lot of places around the world, and I've seen, different things. I mean, when I was a young teenager, I was like a punk rock kid, and I was like, yeah, I hate the United States and blah blah blah. But then it's like I grew up, got older, started traveling around, started really seeing some situations that you don't want to live in,
Mhm.
and then it kind of made me be like, you know what, the United States has its problems, but man, we are lucky to be able to be here.
And ask anybody who comes here or who
Yeah.
wants to come here
Mhm.
from
We have true freedom here
yeah.
for now.
We have like as much freedom as we're gonna have. And
We could have more.
we could have
Yeah,
We could
some
have more. And that's what I think is a shame too, is like so many people don't realize what they've got.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to come to the point to where it's like so many people don't realize what they've got until it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously. And that's why I cannot get on board with a lot of our friends or even just anybody in general. There are plenty of people who do this, but I'll speak from our colleagues who just constantly say, I hate America. If I can move out of here, I would. I'm like, where are you going to go that's really any better? Because you're probably going to say something like Europe, right? It's like, I know they're preoccupied with racism and cops and stuff like that. These places are very racist as well.
Yeah.
It's not, it's a different vibe of racism, but it's like there is plenty of racism in Europe.
All over the world.
All over the world. I'm just saying they'll probably be like, yeah, I'd go to Europe.
I try to tell
Yeah.
people like there's a dude in Sochi, Russia. There's the pier, the it's like the Long Beach of Russia, okay, and we have performers and just like in Long Beach, there's a guy that was painted all gold, but people could tell that he's a black dude, and right on the street, people will just call him a slur. Just be like, hey, look at that. But you know what? They'll tip him too. And that's that peculiar type of racism that I'm talking about. But you have to travel and experience something like that because you don't even think that's possible in the United States, just so nonchalant like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's more covert forms of that as well, right? So it's a spectrum of things. But the other point there is he was saying, ask any person that moved here. Ask me. How about that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ask your parents.
Ask my parents.
Yep.
I'll tell you the same thing. But when you have a legacy of being born here, you live here. What happens? You're born into a family, you go to school. The worst thing that's gonna happen to you in the 4th grade is you break a leg, and then you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Or you're bullied or something like that.
Yeah, which is bad. That's bad stuff. That's definitely bad stuff. But you don't live in a tent outside for 3 days, and then your friend moves you in the back room, and then that kind of shit.
Well, and in my case, I mean, there's certain parts of the world where if I proclaimed my spiritual beliefs, I would be sentenced to death.
Yeah.
That too.
You
Yeah,
know?
you
And that's
know.
real. And
Yeah.
a lot of Americans try to be like, oh, it's whatever, man. That's not. And it's
Mhm.
like, no, that's real.
Yeah.
Here's a very an even simpler one that I thought of the other day because it's been in the news so much. That basketball player Brittany Griner, that WNBA player who got arrested in Russia because she had a weed pen on her, maybe CBD, maybe not, as well as some flour on her as well. And everybody's pissed. They're like, they're not bringing her back. They'd bring LeBron back if he was stuck over there. And it's like, actually, by the way, we know plenty of other people, American citizens, who were just doing stuff that weren't brought back, by the government. The government doesn't have to bring you back. It'd be nice if they did, but you broke the law in Russia. I don't care if you had to pack quick. That was an excuse given. Pack quick and forgot it was in there. It's like when I went to Korea, I know that is so serious.
Yeah, you don't
If
do
you
that.
have- You don't bring it, and you don't have the ego about you to say, well, I'm a NBA player. I can bring weed. It's like they don't care. And actually, because you're from the United States, you should be more worried about that because they're not going to treat you any better.
Well, and that's the thing too, that I'm sure everyone over there is like, look at this arrogant American
Mm-hmm.
that thinks that they can come over here and do whatever they want and not pay the consequences like we would.
Right.
And this
You
same American, Brittany Griner, is one of the people. And I understand, where she's coming from to an extent for anybody who's thinking stuff about me right now. But she's one of the people who's like, never stand for the national anthem, always kneel. I hate America. America sucks. And now you want to come home. Now you want us to bring you home. And we will bring you home or we'll welcome you back. But you need to learn a lesson from this. Because as you have learned, one, you can smoke weed here. Okay. Pretty chill. But two, the freedom thing. This is as much freedom as you're going to have.
Well, that's what I mean. They
And
don't.
stop complaining.
Your average American does not comprehend that. I mean, this is total fantasy, but I think that Americans should be required to travel outside of the country
Mhm.
for a minimum of 10 days and go somewhere not horrible, but I mean, going back to when I went to Cambodia, it's like we were in Cambodia for about 7 days. Well, we had a layover in South Korea. Then we went to Cambodia. Then we went to Laos. Then we came back to Cambodia, went back to Korea, came home. But traveling from Cambodia to Laos was really mind-blowing to me because there was extreme poverty. And I'm talking like, so we took a 7 to 9 hour drive northeast out of Cambodia to the Lao border. And it was just village after village after village, dirt roads, village after village after village after village, where these villages would have a house maybe about as big as this room that we're in, on stilts, with one wall completely exposed to the elements, with multiple hammocks in it, no electricity, no running water. Kids 10 years old and younger were just completely naked. You know what I mean? And these people were the happiest people I've ever met in my life.
Right.
And it's like, you drop an American off over there, I mean, they're going to freak out if they can't get cell phone reception.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And it's like, man, and it really made me realize, and another weird thing is I was like, man, this is strange. as an American to witness this.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized, like, okay, I'm in a Buddhist country. The vibe is just different. These people are genuinely happy with what they've got, you know? And I think just going out in the world and experiencing things like that will make you humble real quick, you know? It was funny. We were going through village after village after village, and these houses were all up on stilts. And we stopped at this one village to eat. And the people were real friendly. They like wanted to talk to you, you know? And I asked one of the guys, I said, he spoke English pretty well. And I was having a conversation with him. And I said, hey, why are your houses all up on stilts? Does it flood like everywhere? And he was like, oh, no, 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 no. Tiger.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, yeah, there's tigers everywhere.
Wow.
You know, and I mean, and they're just laughing about it like, oh, just the tigers, you know.
Wow.
But beautiful country, beautiful people, very positive for the environment that they were living in, you know.
Yeah. And I think that's almost a misconception that we get here is that all these people across the world in third world countries are completely dissatisfied with their living. And it's not entirely true.
It's not the case.
Another example is this guy, Matt Walsh, who did this documentary, What is a Woman? That was kind of big. And he went to the Maasai tribe in Kenya, I believe. And he was just walking with them, staying with them. And in one of the interviews, he was like, would you guys ever want to move to America? And they're like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we never want to do that.
Well, and some of those places are beautiful. So another example, when I was over there, when we got, I like to say this because I don't think people understand that this is a reality. So we hired this guy to drive us to Laos. We got to the Lao border. There was a huge, huge barbed wire fence all the way across the whole border. Our driver stops, we get out, and I'm like, what are we doing? And they're like, we have to walk through this checkpoint, show them our passports, and pay to cross the border. And we have to hire another driver.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what do you mean? We can't just get this guy to drive us the rest of the way? And they were like, no. And I was completely ignorant of this. I was like, what do you mean? Like, he's been driving us, 7 hours. And they were like, no, he can't leave. And they were basically like, look, if you're Cambodian, Laotian, you don't have the ability to cross borders.
Oh, wow.
Unless you're rich. Unless you're rich or you work for the government, you're not leaving the country that you live in.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we had to hire another guy once we got into Laos to drive us the rest of the way. And that kind of blew my mind. You know what I mean? It's like that's another freedom that we as Americans just take for granted. You know, it's like we can cross state lines. We can drive into Mexico. We can drive into Canada. No problem. But it's like, and these countries in Southeast Asia are small. And it's like, yeah, you're kind of, if you're a regular Joe there, you're kind of trapped within your borders.
Right after the Soviet collapse, when I was born, the infrastructure for easy border crossing movement was still not there. The government had just collapsed. And during the Soviet times, once again, you don't leave unless you're rich or you have some government business. So what the situation was is actually the borders, because of the collapse situation, they got super infested with crime because it was a free-for-all. So when we were trying to go visit my mother's extended family in Georgia, you have to drive from Sochi southeast, cross the Georgian border where there's border patrol and all that shit going on there. And literally, my mom put on the nicest shit she had. She had some fake paper or something, paperwork of some sort, suggesting that she worked for the consulate. And she basically had to finagle us through. And I didn't understand what was going on because I was so young. But the memory is still so clear, and I'm able to replay it. And I realized what she had to do just to get me across to see her family. And she was risking her life, my life, because they could have just grabbed her, raped her, killed her, sold me off somewhere, whatever. I mean, that's what we're dealing with. Can you even fathom something like this? I can go to Colorado right now, no freaking problem. I mean, it's so crazy. So yeah, I mean, but I also said I think it could get better. I think it could get better. How do you think it could get better?
Well, unfortunately, I think that things are going to get worse before they get better. I hope that they don't get much worse, but I do believe that will happen because I try to stay positive about everything. But going back into the occult realm, um, so when we talk about the planet Mars, Mars is kind of a destructive force.
War.
War. You know, and in the tarot, the tower, the tower represents Mars, and when you see the picture of it, it's like being hit by lightning, and there's people flying out of it to their death. And so, a lot of time in tarot readings, this card will scare people, but I'll tell them like, look, I'm an Aries, so Mars is my planet, and I have formed a good relationship with that energy. And I think that people don't understand that it's like, once again, we live in a world of duality. So any type of energy that you're talking about is going to have positive and negative sides to it. Now, the good side of that is winning, conquering. You know, it's the power, it's the force to overcome. So I tell a lot of people, I'm like, look, if you're buying some property and you have the money to build a big old house on this property, but there's an old shack on this property, you've got to destroy that shack first before you build a big house. Same thing with farmers. It's like, you're going to burn your crops down before you replant for the next year.
Right.
And it's like, that is the martial force. So it's, and it's a natural thing,
Martial.
Yeah, it's a natural thing. So I do foresee things getting a bit worse before they get better. But ultimately, the outcome will be for the greater good. These forces have to play out in their natural way.
One of the things that Jordan Maxwell points out that I enjoy him for so much is that the corporate infrastructure for what we're living in right now was set in stone, as it were. The cornerstone for the corporatized global structure was set about a century ago. And what I mean by that is, first of all, let's look at something as simple as Woodrow Wilson in 1913. When he put it into law that the Federal Reserve would be a private entity that would control the finances of the country. That was a strategic move. Every war after that was financed by that entity. And it was done so with so many other corporate stakeholders involved. And these relationships grew and they grew. We know now in mainline history that the Rockefeller family was sending money to the Third Reich. And so many other families. There's also the implication of the Vatican in there as well, which is touted as a conspiracy theory. But any PhD level historian would know quite a bit about that if they're serious. So that's why I say it could be better is because we've already been kind of asleep at the wheel a little bit.
Well, and I going back to things are going to get worse before they get better. It's like, this is the good thing about the internet. A lot of these secrets that these families have held onto for years are being revealed to the general public. So they're not going to, I think a lot of these powerful families that do not have the good intentions of the whole of humanity in mind, are going to start to fall because they can't hide in the shadows anymore. But they will fight tooth and nail to hold on to that power.
Oh, yeah.
And while that's happening, things will become worse.
Mm.
But ultimately, I do think that good will prevail. And I think that that's what we're witnessing right now.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
I think a lot of the crazy things that are happening nowadays are because that's what's happening. You know, we're seeing these people fight for the power, for the little bit of power that they're still trying to hold on to.
Mhm.
Right. I think a lot of people see with the past 2 years when they lost some of these freedoms and then things started to get obviously ludicrous in a way with government and stuff like that. They will think, oh, you know what? I'm kind of seeing this. Not everybody, of course, but there's a decent amount of people. And they'll think, should probably keep it because once that freedom is really taken away, you're not getting it back.
What freedoms have you lost? What freedoms? Huh? Everything's peachy clean, ain't it?
Well, we've definitely lost a freedom of speech. There's no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Well, self-censoring right now.
we're self-censoring ourselves right now. We censored our last podcast. I bleeped out every V word. The podcast we did before that, we had this guy, Dr. Edward Group, who we met just through one of our bandmates because he teaches his son, and Edward Group is the one who made all the supplements for. I almost want to censor myself right now so that doesn't get flagged in any way.
Mr. Jones.
Mr. Jones. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Made all his
Love 'em.
supplements. Right. It's like, wow. But that got taken down. Both. And it wasn't even as gruesome as it could have been, our talk. I honestly thought, this will probably fare well. Especially, we also had another doctor, Dr. Mary Bowden here, who is suing Houston Methodist. And she owns Breathe MD on Kirby, kind of by Whole Foods there. And, you know, she's big on the other therapeutic drugs.
I think I saw
Mhm.
that episode. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a pretty clear-cut talk about everything, and that wasn't taken down. And so I'm just thinking, maybe they can pick and choose what they want, but
Well, you never know. I mean, you never know who's. That's the weird thing about the internet. It's like anyone can report anything.
Mhm.
So it's
Right.
like you get some fanatics out there that don't like one little thing that's said.
Right.
They could report you. They could start telling their friends to report you. They could,
Yeah.
you know, and it's just.
We've experienced
We've
that.
we've had that happen. I mean, when we had D Ike on here, this guy who's a musician here in Texas, not in Texas, in Houston. Should I say his name?
Yes.
Because maybe Ryan might know him. Nick Cooper, drummer. You know who this is? He got so mad at us. And when we put out that episode, and he was arguing with us on Facebook when he said something, when he tagged us in something. He made a meme of me,
Doesn't surprise me.
Tagged all his friends.
had everybody call me racist. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And calling me names on the thread. And then, and then we said, hey man, we'll do a podcast with you since you're so mad and you think we're so wrong here.
And I set that up as an olive branch.
Which now I'll quickly go through the rest of the story. We did the podcast
With him?
Yeah.
via Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was what it was, got heated here and there.
Is it still online?
No, I'll get to
Ooh,
this.
We have it.
We have it. But we probably should put it up now, actually, because it would be more vindication now. But he was basically just upset with saying that BLM is getting funding and not using it properly. That was basically his main gripe. And obviously that is rung true today, for sure. And we were about to publish it, and then he got mad at us about the David thing and made this meme of me and started calling me names in it. And he made a meme saying that one thing that I said was this ultra fallacy. It was about this guy who used to work for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Garrett Von Bosch, talking about what he was saying. He's like, oh, since a veterinary said it, it's false. That's basically what he was saying. I took the time to make a meme and post it. And then
I mean, doesn't he have better things to do?
no.
He doesn't.
And so I see him every week at Avant Garden. And one week, a couple weeks ago, he came up to me. He's like, hey, whatever. And this is over a year ago at this point. He said, whatever happened to our podcast, man? And I was like, I didn't post it. And he's like, what happened? And I was like, well, you remember that meme you made of me? And he was like, no. And I'm like, wow, really? You don't remember the meme you made? And he's like, no. And I was like, fine, I'll go get my phone and show it to you right now. So I showed it to him. He's like, I was like, dude, come on. I was like, when you started having people call me racist and you make this meme and you start calling me names, and I didn't call him any names because I'm not going to do the back and forth
That's
fighting
not in your
thing.
character.
No. I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to give you the privilege of even being on the platform with us. And then he said, you know what? I was wrong about the stuff, which I was like, okay, I respect that you're willing to say I'm wrong. But it's just this kind of stupid stuff. Boggles my mind.
Well, feel good about the fact that hopefully anyone that saw any of that stuff can go to the old saying, you will know them by their fruits.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan of name calling. I'm not a fan of vengeance. I'm not a fan of not that, but like just, just making fun of somebody.
Well, it's like what we were saying earlier. If you're spitting out negativity and acting like that, people see that.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to hear about it.
You can feel it too.
Do you think that they're going to be like, oh, he's a good guy?
Right.
No.
No.
Regardless of opinions, it's like it's not a good look.
Yeah.
No, it's
especially if you're in the public eye, which he is.
not. Yeah.
That's a shame. That's a shame.
I also just can't get on board with Facebook arguments anymore.
It's pointless.
I've done it, and I regret every single one of them. And now I'm for sure like, you know what? It's not worth it one bit. And if any progress will be made with anything, it's going to happen outside of that.
It's going to have to be face to face. One, obviously, this person doesn't want to have face to face real conversations.
Right.
Denying that he was attacking you,
The gaslighting stuff is my trigger. Once you start trying to gaslight me, like that didn't happen, or I don't know, or that wasn't what I did.
You must be confused.
Right. That kind of stuff is really insulting.
Yeah, that's
on everyone's intelligence.
I'm sorry to hear that, man. That's not cool.
I mean, I'm okay with it now because, if you're saying I was wrong about it, as in he was wrong about it, well, I'm glad that you have the wherewithal to be that because he's a smart guy. No doubt about that. But I wanted to
talk about the Jesuits.
Yeah, I really wanted to bring this up because we've been looking into the Jesuits. I went to a Jesuit high school, an all-male Jesuit high school. Obviously, I didn't know anything about anything back then. I wish I did. I wish I could go back and think about it more. But, it has to do with the Vatican, has to do with the other societies. And I'll just start it off with this and we can get into it. I was reading something / watching something that talked about the extreme Jesuit oath that they take when they get into a higher level. And this part of the oath was so flabbergasting to me that I was like, is this fake? And so I went and checked a bunch of other ones just all over online. And apparently it appears in the congressional record. I can find the exact thing momentarily. I have it last night on my iPad. But this one part of it, the Jesuit who's taking the oath says, I furthermore promise and declare that I will, when opportunity present, make and wage relentless war secretly or openly against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals as I am directed to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will spare neither age, sex, or condition, and that I will hang, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the walls in order to annihilate forever their execrable race, that when the same cannot be done openly, I will secretly use the poisoned cup the strangulating cord, the steel of the poniard, or the leaden bullet, regardless of the honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the person or persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed so to do by any agent of the Pope or superior of the Brotherhood of the Holy Faith of the Society of Jesus.
Wow.
It's intense.
That's extreme.
And that's why they call it the
So
extreme oath.
That's you verified that.
It's hard.
Hard to verify it because I need to see the exact.
Congressional
So-
record.
I don't want to like take the time for me right now to go out and seek. But last night, when I heard it for the first time, I was like, that sounds too extreme for me to believe off the cuff. And there's like way more to the oath, by the way. But this is also coming from a book that this guy wrote. And basically, in this congressional record, I guess they're recording some hearing in 18 something something. I had the whole citation. It's just on my iPad, which is not right here. And that's what I need to find if we can 100% verify the source.
It's pretty wild.
But I didn't realize that the Jesuits were essentially like a military order of the Pope.
What do you know about him? You know anything about
I mean, I don't know a lot. I do believe that there are secret groups within the Vatican. We talked about it a little bit on the last year. I as I've said before, I don't judge anyone because of their religion, but I do not like the fact that that it is totally verifiable that the Vatican denies spiritual information from the public,
Mm-hmm.
and I disagree with that. But I mean, that goes back to the time of Egypt. You know, once the priests realized, like, oh, we can make money off of this and control people. I mean, it's been happening ever since then, and that's not the way. You know,
What I also think is so crazy is that
like I said, religion is to guide and regulate, not to control or rule. You know.
there's so many weird things about the Vatican / the history of the Vatican. Even that Pope Benedict the 16th was a Nazi inquisitor. And I'm thinking, how is he Pope? Knowing what we know about, you know, like the Nuremberg trials, not that they included everybody, but just that as a concept. Or even this story recently that came out like last year where they were talking about arresting this 80 some odd year old woman who worked as a secretary for the Nazis when she was 15. They were trying to arrest her in Germany because of that. And that I was thinking, okay, look, she's 15. There's no way she could have had much agency about what she was doing, especially under a regime like that. Anyway, but, you know, him being the Pope, it's kind of a big leap from being a soldier inquisitor to the Pope.
It's pretty wild. I mean, there's so much stuff going on there that I think, unfortunately, we won't find out even a fraction of it in our lifetimes. But yeah, there's a lot there to unpack for sure with all of that stuff.
Did another thing that I saw yesterday, did you see there was like an explosion at the Hoover Dam?
I saw a picture, but I didn't really read into it.
I don't know if that was anything in particular, but it led me to the Hoover Dam, and I'll hopefully put these pictures in the podcast. I didn't see all the symbolism at the Hoover Dam. I think even there's kind of a entranceway or a main stage area that has a bunch of big things, and it's like these giant angels like this on these black cubes. And then there's a large stone artwork on the ground that really appears to be the square and compass. And then there is a circle somewhere around there too. We have to look at the picture again, but there's a pyramid and it's pointing to the word Thuban. Have you ever heard this word Thuban? And apparently, again, need to verify this too, but that has to do with the Great Serpent.
Hmm.
And apparently, the word Vatican means something about serpent. Is that true?
I don't.
Or is
I
that-
don't
that-
recall that.
They said that though.
Well, I'm sure you guys have seen the room there that looks like a big snake head.
Yeah. That room, as well as the other room where it's like Christ coming up in the back, and it's this giant mangled.
That's in that room.
Oh, you're right.
That's a
That's in the
statue
same
in
room.
that room.
Yeah, it's
Is that the same room?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, according to the architect, that is not the architect, but they were interviewed. Somebody in the Vatican was interviewed about this, and the answer was that simply it's Jesus rising from a nuclear holocaust. I
Yeah.
think that's what.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
what they
exactly
said.
What a
what it was.
weird concept.
That's also a
Anyway,
weird concept.
you know.
But Knights of Malta, Knights Templars, go.
I'm not familiar with them.
You're not?
I mean, I kind of know about the Knights Templar, but as far as like nowadays, I'm not familiar with it. I
Have you
will
heard
go
of any-
into something that we kind of skipped earlier, and that's the point of. Well, I guess we talked about this in the last episode about the goals of most of these Western mystery schools are the same.
Yeah, say it again.
They're the same in the West as they are in the East, to where not really so much Masonry, but I will say advanced Masonry. Once you start getting into the Scottish Rite and things like that, the teachings, once you get into the Scottish Rite, you immediately get into Kabbalah. And really the goal for all of these Western mystery schools and the majority of Eastern mystery schools are to spiritually work on yourself, whether it be through meditation, mysticism, ceremonial magic, to cultivate a quote unquote body of light. For example, to get even more specific with it, in the Golden Dawn, you go through series of invocations where you're invoking the elements, the planets, the zodiac, the Sephiroth on the Tree of Life. And what you're doing is you're cultivating your light body. And the goal is, the ultimate goal is that you transcend death. You break the wheel of incarnation. You become a immortal, interdimensional being, if you will, an angel. And this is the goal, even when you go over to the East. Tantric Buddhists believe the same thing. They just call it a rainbow body instead of a solar body.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same thing. And I really want to push the fact for the audience that anyone that is involved in a true mystery school is not pursuing evil goals. They were all created to be good, to involve spiritual evolution. And like we've talked about before, a lot of them have been infiltrated. A lot of this knowledge has been kind of bastardized and used for evil purposes. But the true purpose and the true orders that still remain today, this is what they're doing,
I was just gonna ask, when you said that you couldn't comment last time because you were apprentice, right? Are you basically not supposed to comment
Well, the thing
on
with
the level you're on, whatever it is?
the thing with Freemasonry is it's like a kind of a rule that you're not really supposed to advertise it until you're a master mason, because you can be stopped.
Mm-hmm.
So your progression through the first 3 degrees, you can be expelled essentially and stopped in your progression. This is pretty rare, but it will happen from time to time where, if someone's intentions aren't good or if someone's causing problems, they'll be kicked out. So a lot of the times, if you see anyone wearing a Masonic ring or they have a bumper sticker or a tattoo or anything like that, they should be a Master Mason.
Right.
You will see people that aren't, that are flashing that imagery.
Right.
But anyone that's a real Master Mason is not going to be displaying that imagery or really even talking about it much until they're a Master Mason. And the thing with Masonry is not a secret society.
Right.
It's a society with secrets.
Yeah.
Because Masons are allowed to talk about it and display our symbols and signs publicly. So it's not really a true secret society.
Two quick things. On that note, is it true that there are overt examples of politicians, for example, using the handshakes during photo ops, for example?
I'm sure that they have done it before. I mean, that's another thing. Like, you're not really supposed to do that.
Mm.
You're only supposed to do that within a lodge. I've had people when they've met me be like, "Oh, you're a Mason," and they'll try to give me like certain handshakes, and I'm like, "You're not supposed to do that." You know what I mean? Like, you're not really proving anything to me. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it's kind of an ego thing.
There's a video of Anthony Fauci coming on stage. He's about to do a little presentation for the NIH, and he walks up real quick, faces the audience, does the hidden hand, looks around, waves, and goes to the podium.
Well, that's not a Masonic symbol.
So tell me about it.
I don't know what that is.
You don't know what the hidden hand is?
When I looked,
well, that's what I mean too. It's like a lot. There are definitely, like we talked about last year.
I did see it in Manly Paul's book, though. I did see it in that. Yeah.
Maybe it's something that's not used anymore. I don't know. See, that's the thing too, though. It's like we talked about last year. A lot of these groups have been infiltrated, and then groups have been formed from groups. You know what I mean? So it's like, and a lot of the Western mystery schools are all based off of Masonry. Basically, all of the Western mystery schools are pretty much based off of Masonry, and then when you get into the more occult ones, they're all based off of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So everything kind of starts from there, but there's been countless groups that have formed, and then there's been things that have been published that these groups will stop using because they're no longer secret. So it could have been that was an older sign from Freemasonry that's not used today. I don't know.
And let's say that it is, because I remember seeing that video too, and immediately I'm thinking probably just reaching in his jacket, to grab something. But then I watched it, and I was like, damn.
Seems pretty deliberate.
Well,
and that's what I mean. It's like that could be a group that we don't know about that adopted that symbolism and is using it.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's like there's so many groups out there. It's like you're not gonna know. And especially like a lot of these quote unquote nefarious groups, they're gonna stay hidden, especially if they're doing questionable things. So it's like, we won't really know what's going on because, they're going to stay secretive.
And another thing I was thinking, I was glad you wore your tie when you came in today. One, it's sweet tie. Did you get that from anywhere specific?
Amazon, believe it or not.
Okay, cool. With Jordan Maxwell, this historian, he talks so much about Egypt and how so many of the things that we have today come from Egypt.
There's tons. Yeah, tons.
And I feel like an idiot when I'm watching it but it also is like invigorating. It's so invigorating for me to watch it because he's like, where does red, white, and blue come from? And I'm like, I've never even asked that question. Why do we have red, white, and blue? Why is that such a commonality in national color? for America, but also globally too. And he goes into the Red House and the White House in Egypt, and they were the two kingdoms early on that were posed against each other. And eventually they said, okay, we need to join powers, and they combined the red cap with the white cap. And then the blue cap was actually a wartime cap. And of course, he goes into much greater detail about it. And then apparently, and they showed an original version of this as well, the American flag is just red and white with the stars, and the blue behind the stars is a wartime symbol. Now, I know it sounds crazy because none of us have ever seen or I think in general, none of us have ever seen a flag without the black background, the blue background. But they did show like an original flag without it. And I was like, wow, that's interesting too. And then, of course, pyramid, obelisk, certain ritual, all this kind of stuff. Even when you go down to the Federal Reserve building. Sorry, what's the building on Allen Parkway? Is it the Federal Reserve building?
Yeah.
It's like that weird red colored brick with bright dark blue all over it. And there's a big old eagle on the front on a cylinder standing on a cut off pyramid top. Or it's a pyramid with the top cut off like the dollar, but he's standing on it. And it's like, shh. And Jordan said that there's a word for that name of pyramid too that does
It's called a truncated pyramid.
Is it called truncated? Okay. Maybe I misheard the word. I almost thought he said like Chiabas or Chiabas, and pains me.
Chiapas?
Maybe?
That might be.
Chiapas. Yeah. Okay. That sounds right, what he said. I was just thinking, wow, there's so
or
much.
Cheops. Yeah, there's a word like that. I'm not real sure though.
And then the etymology that we get from all of it, and all these facts, all these things are running through my mind. I feel like I can't even pick one out.
Yeah, I love Egyptian mythology. It's a huge part of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. It's even part of Scottish Rite Masonry once you get into that. There's so many cool stories, and there's so many things. So another group that I belong to is the Kemetic Orthodoxy. This is something that I got into about halfway through my journey through the Outer Order of the Golden Dawn. And Kemet is the original name of Egypt, so Kemetic Orthodoxy. But it's really cool. It's more of a personal thing. It's not a Western mystery school per se. It's more of a religious thing. But it's a great supplement for anyone who's involved in the majority of the Western mystery schools. I mean, Egypt mythology is rampant throughout a lot of them. So I think it's a great supplement. Basically, they'll do it's a woman named Tamara Sawida that runs it here in the U.S. I think it's only in the U.S. And basically what they do is it's free. They offer a class. I think it's a 10-week course that you go through, and it basically teaches you a bunch of ancient Egyptian history about how they worshipped their deities, essentially. And it's pretty cool. They teach you one ritual that's very Eastern. They teach you how to create a shrine for your deities that are directly related to you and how to kind of work with them. But it's very cool because they do this ritual called the rite of parental divination. And they believe that for your soul to be incarnated here on earth, that either one or two, it's a singular one or a pair of Egyptian deities created a pact that they would stay with you with this specific soul through every incarnation.
Whoa.
And then they also believe that there are these other deities called beloveds who can come in and out when you need them.
Wow.
But you have one or two that is with you for the whole entire time that your soul is here.
That happens after you do a certain ritual, or that's
no. It's just
unravel.
It's just something that you're born with. And so when you do after you go through the course, she offers a like a little limited time where she'll do this ritual for people and help you figure out which ones are directly connected to you, and it's really cool.
Is there a set? Is it it's obviously not an infinite number of deities, right? It's like
It's the Egyptian
it's the Egyptian deities,
pantheon, yeah.
and okay, and then but they all go out to everybody, but
Yeah.
only certain ones to
Yeah.
each person.
Yeah.
Is that kind of similar to people saying like they're guardian angels?
It's similar. I think it's a little different. But yeah, it's similar, you know. And when you think about it, like a lot of the Hermetic teachings and even to an extent the Gnostic teachings say that, you know, God is within you. And we are all parts of the divine being here experiencing earth and learning lessons and things like this, right? So it's kind of cool when you think about it because the Egyptians are polytheists, but in reality, they're monotheists because there's hundreds of Egyptian deities, but ultimately they are all expressions of one.
Hmm.
So
What's
it's
the name of that one?
well, the name. This is you guys will like this because I know you like to talk about meanings of words and things like that. The name for God in Egypt is Nature. Nature.
Oh,
Mm.
So pretty cool. But it's a cool concept because they're like, yeah, every one of you is a God
oh.
experiencing Earth,
Mhm.
but you're just different flavors of God. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Have you ever done any searching for like within your Akashic record?
I haven't. I will tell you a cool story. Um, going back to my time in Southeast Asia, we were taking malaria pills because we were in the jungle most of the time. And one of the side effects for the malaria pills is like insane nightmares.
Oh my God.
And this is pretty personal, but I like to share this story. So we were in Laos, staying at this place that was on top of a mountain, and it was beautiful. I mean, it looked like something out of Jurassic Park. Like I would not be surprised if a dinosaur just walked out of the jungle right now. And we were there for maybe 4 days, and it was absolutely beautiful. There was a big ravine with a waterfall. It's actually a place in Laos called Tat Phan Waterfalls. It's a famous landmark, and it's high up in the mountains. And I was reading Edgar Casey's Tales of Ancient Egypt at the time. A great book.
We just talked about it
And
yesterday.
I was reading it every night. And so this one night I went to sleep and I had probably the most insane dream I've ever had in my life. And once I became kind of conscious in my dream, what I was seeing, it was like I was watching a movie. So what I was seeing was going back to Knights Templar. It was like these guys on horseback that looked like Knights Templar. And to me, I immediately thought like, this is weird because that's not uh, an era of time that I'm very interested in. Like, I think it's fascinating, but it's never been like something that I've, really researched into. So I'm sitting there watching these guys, and there's about 4 or 5 of them on horseback, and they're all in a circle facing each other. And I start to realize real quick what's going on. And they are in some kind of war or battle, and they're retreating. And they're kind of like regrouping and running, right? And I started to realize that there was this one guy in particular that was kind of like the leader of this little group. And I could tell that he was like very worried about his people. Like he was like, we got to get out of here. And they were basically saying like, look, we got to get out of here. But in order for us to be safe, we have to make it through this forest. So once we get through this forest, once we get on the other side, we're going to be okay. But it's going to be real dangerous and we got to get the hell out of here. So we should split up. While this guy is saying this, I'm focusing on his face. And I was like, this is weird. That guy kind of looks like me.
Mm.
And as soon as I had that thought, I stopped seeing it and started seeing it. I stopped seeing it in the third person and started seeing it through his eyes in the first person.
Oh, wow.
But it was still playing out like a movie. I didn't have control of what was happening, but I was seeing it from his perspective. So long story short, they split up. They start going through the forest. This guy that I'm inside of gets caught by 3 guys in the forest. Long story short, they knock him off the horse. They start essentially trying to beat him to death. One guy gets on this arm, one guy gets on this arm. They're kneeling on his arms. Another guy's straddling, just punching him in the face. And me or this guy or whatever is laughing. And he starts screaming, "You will not kill me. You will not kill me," over and over. And these guys are just, beating the hell out of him. And he's laughing like, "You will not kill me. I will not die. I will not die." And so the guy that's straddling him starts to become angry, pulls a dagger out, and just starts stabbing him all over the torso.
Oh, wow.
And the guy starts laughing louder. "You will not kill me. You will not kill me. I will not die." And then so the guy grabs him by the hair, slits his throat.
Ooh.
And at this point in the dream, I actually felt hot liquid all over my throat. And I started to panic. Never had a dream like this in my life.
Whoa.
And I started to panic, and I started to feel myself kind of like going out. And I was like, oh my God, I'm dying. I'm dying. I'm dying. I'm dying. And I started really freaking out in my own dream. And I realized while I was panicking that I had my right fist balled up. And I could tell that I was like gripping something really, really tight. And as I started to go out, I looked and I was holding a chain with a little charm on the end of it. And the last thing I saw before I woke up was what was on the charm. And it was the symbol that I wear on this ring here.
Oh, wow.
And it's the symbol of the Rosicrucians.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up crying, freaking out, like completely hysterical. My wife was in bed next to me. She had no idea what was going on. And my heart was racing. And I realized at that moment, I was like, okay, this was not a dream. This was to show me that this happened to me in a past life. And I need to be very careful about how I navigate through this world and who I talk to my beliefs about and what I say. Because I was killed in this past life for my beliefs, and it can happen again.
Wow.
And it made me almost afraid. Not necessarily afraid, but it made me not want to know about past lives.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, I'm sure I've had multiple horrible experiences that if I did recollect, it might kind of mess me up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you weren't the guy getting beaten, right? You were.
No, he was.
You were the guy getting beaten.
He got his throat slit.
Yeah.
You were
Yeah.
wearing
And I've
that
had
ring.
some dreams after that I think were past life visions. Nothing as crazy, but for the most part, I try not to focus on any of that.
Were you part of the Rosicrucian at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And yeah, I try not to. I mean, I think it's interesting. I think it's cool to kind of look into that stuff. But after I had those couple of experiences, I was like, I'm going to do what I've been taught to do, which is to focus on the present, focus on this exact moment right here, right now, not the future, not the past. For my own spiritual evolution, I think it's better to be that way.
Are you able to discuss any of the names of the Scottish Rite levels?
Well, you just go through. So Scottish Rite is cool. It's like a college. It's like a Masonic college. And it's different than quote unquote Blue Lodge. So Blue Lodge is the first 3 degrees. That's where you go through. That's where you become a master. There is a lot of work involved in that, like straight up. It's not easy. I know that I think it's Texas and there's 3 or 4 other states that are like the hardest ones to become a master mason in. Texas is one of them.
Mm,
Oh wow.
And it's because of the memory work. There's a lot of memory work
Right.
involved. And it is not easy. Um, but I think it's like that for a reason. It separates the wheat from the chaff. You know what I mean? Like people that aren't going to do it figure it out pretty quick and drop out. You got to be pretty serious if you want to do it. But it is amazing. Like you'll meet all kinds of people from all walks of life that have become master
Right.
masons, and it's awesome. It really is a very fraternal, very brotherly thing. Um, but after you become a master mason, you have the option to join what they call impending bodies, which is Scottish Rite, York Rite, the Shriners, the Grotto, things like that. Um, Scottish Rite is the one where you can get to 32nd or 33rd degree. 33rd degree is a conferred thing that not everyone will attain. Usually it involves a lot of community work, a lot of work for your particular Scottish Rite Valley that you work in, a lot of volunteer work, things like that, a lot of charity, years of service, Um, but it's cool because it's different. So, like I was saying, the fourth degree starts off immediately with the Kabbalah. So you see a lot of different things coming in. One, like I was saying too, one of the degrees goes into the weighing of the heart, the ancient Egyptian myth. But it's a different thing. It's not. It's more of a. I think the only way I can really say it is it's more of a Masonic college. It's supplemental to the master's degree. A lot of people say there is no degree higher than the third degree, which is Master Mason. Everything else is kind of supplemental. The York Rite is another one where you can get some more degrees, but it is a little more Christian based,
Hmm.
where the Scottish Rite is kind of all over the place.
Is
But
it
yeah.
called York because it's kind of from the British Islands? It's from that legacy.
Yeah, originally I think so. And I don't know a lot about York Rite. I'm not involved in York Rite. But that is where that is the direction that people go if they're interested in Knights Templar. That's in the York Rite.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Shriners and the Grotto, those are more Masonic social clubs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, would it be cool since you brought it to show the fez
Yeah, I can show mine.
since we're here?
My only other question was about Gnostics. If there's a church, Gnostic church here, organization people can look into if they're interested.
This is a fez for the Shinar Grotto that's based here in Houston. And it's just a social club for Master Masons.
How
only.
much does that go for right there? That fez right there.
They're expensive.
Who can you say who makes that? Like who literally puts their hands on it and makes that?
Yeah, we have a.
And who's the man portrayed on the front? The man with the white beard.
He's a character within the story of the Grotto. It's a fictional character. His name is Mokana.
Mokana?
Mm-hmm. So the Grotto, I was telling you guys earlier, the name is Mystic Order of the Veiled Prophets of the Enchanted Realm. And there's this whole mythical story that kind of goes along with it, and he's part of it.
Wow.
He's basically the emblem logo of the Grotto.
So fun.
So you're asking about the Gnostic Church?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in Austin, there is one. There is a Gnostic Church of Austin. It's actually in Round Rock. If you guys are ever out there, it's awesome. You should go visit it. Peter Reardon runs it. And he was ordained by a really famous guy actually in the Gnostic tradition, Bishop Stefan Heller, who is essentially the guy who is responsible for bringing the Gnostic tradition from Europe to the United States, and he's still alive.
Did you have a picture with him?
Yeah, yeah.
feel
We
like
went to a Gnostic convention,
I think I
essentially,
remember that picture. Yeah.
out there at the Gnostic Church in Austin last year, and it was great. They do great events. The church is very active out there, and it's great just to go check out. Very mixed group of people, very cool, very welcoming, very non-judgmental, and it's great just to go witness it. It's like I was saying earlier. I recommend people, if you want to know what somebody's doing, join the group. There's nothing wrong with joining a group, and then eventually not going, because that's how you figure out what you like and what you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna know what groups are doing or know if it resonates with you until you go out, meet some people, start doing it, see what you think. And no one's going to like judge you if you stop going. I mean, this is how you find out what path you're going to go towards.
Yeah. Well, you can
I'm good.
close us out.
Well, guys, another banging episode of Ryan Scroggins. We went a lot deeper this time around, so I'm pretty much thinking you guys learned a little bit of something. So it's all out there. The world is a huge place, and it's really the most amazing blockbuster film ever concocted. So enjoy it. And with that, we'll see you guys on the next episode. Follow, subscribe. We seriously need you guys to subscribe because we're doing incredible work here. I think, Chad?
This has been episode 69. So
Great number.
if that's special at all, great. All right, guys. Ryan, thanks so much, man.
Hey, thank you guys so much.
Part 3 coming up.
Mm-hmm.
God bless you, light in extension.
Likewise.